We're here this afternoon for sentencing in the case of State of Georgia versus Brandon Risner. Mr. Risner entered a plea of guilty on June 20, 2024 to all counts included in the general bill of indictment. Those counts include malice murder, felony murder, 2 counts, aggravated assault, 2 counts, aggravated battery, concealing death of another, abandonment of a dead body, theft by taking, removal of body parts from scene of death, tampering with evidence, and obstruction of misdemeanor. As an initial matter, 2 media outlets have filed Rule 22 motions to bring in cameras to the courtroom, Rome News and Court TV. The counselors, any objection to the presence of the the media with their cameras?
None from the state.
None from the defense.
All right.
Judge.
Very well. What I'm going to do is first give the parties an opportunity to present any evidence and aggravation or mitigation or otherwise that you wish to present, and then I'll hear arguments that you wish to make concerning the sentences to be imposed in this case. Ms. Mayo, would the state like to proceed first or defer?
The state will proceed, Your Honor.
All right.
I may have a moment to set up a few things in the courtroom.
Yes.
I'll also say that we have set up a demonstrative a picture of Aaron Davis. I believe this is without objection.
It is.
And so
All right.
we just asked to allow it to remain. May it please the court. As the court will remember, the state gave a brief statement of facts at the guilty plea back in June. So I would like to take a moment to give a little bit of a more detailed version of facts. I've prepared these in a PowerPoint, but I did bring physical printouts of some of the images I've used, if the court would like those as well.
Well, I'll just look online for now.
Yes, sir. I wanted to start kind of with an overview of the different locations that are involved in this case, starting with up here, which is Heritage Park, which is where the vehicle was found. And the vehicle was found on Saturday, November 11th of 2022, November 12th. Of 2022. It was found at 10:41 a.m. by an officer of the Rome Police Department. The vehicle is a Toyota Prius. It had gone into a ditch that is in the part of Heritage Park near where it reaches the river. And that Toyota Prius belonged to Randy Davis, Aaron Davis, the victim's father. Aaron was using the vehicle at that time. The car was found around 10:41. Officers responded, and it was initially just to a suspicious vehicle. But quickly they were able to get in touch with Randy Davis, who let them know that his son had been using the vehicle, and it turned into a missing persons case pretty quickly from that. The case would then evolve where officers who had heard that the defendant had been on scene in Heritage Park where the car was and had given a brief statement to officers there. They heard about that and decided to do a follow-up. So these officers traveled to the defendant's residence in Old East Rome off of Collingwood Drive in order to make contact with him. They did so a little after 2 p.m. in the afternoon that day. they received consent to search the home and pretty quickly found what they believed to be a crime scene of a serious nature due to the amount of blood. They also found cleaning supplies, and when they opened the washer where there were bloody sheets inside, the defendant fled from the residence at that point. That was after around 2:30 is when he fled in the afternoon on that Saturday. In less than 10 hours from when the car was found by police that morning, the murder scene had been identified, the defendant was in custody, and the body had been recovered. Around 7:30 p.m. that evening, Jeremy Risner, the defendant's father, called law enforcement to let them know that the defendant was going to turn himself in. Jeremy went with him, and at that time, Jeremy Risner gave the location of Aaron's body. And Aaron's body was off of Tumlin Drive down here. Tumlin Drive dead ends at a church. And there's as you can see around this, there's a very dense wooded area around the church. And his body was recovered in that wooded area. And I did have just a few brief pictures of each scene. Here's an image from a police camera of the vehicle as it was found partially submerged in this creek. This is a creek in Heritage Park that does run towards the river. Once they pulled the vehicle out of the water, they were able to see what appeared to be blood stains and was later confirmed by the GBI to be not only blood, but Aaron's blood inside the vehicle. This is Aaron's own vehicle. Also within the vehicle was a backpack that was filled with bricks. These bricks had a St. Joe marker on them, and later those bricks were found both inside and outside the defendant's residence. And then this is for the back of the vehicle. So Aaron's own vehicle was used to transport Aaron's body. This is the upstairs bedroom at the defendant's residence where Aaron was staying that night. And the defendant had already begun cleaning it. Up here is a large patch of what turned out to be blood spatter and blood that the defendant had attempted to clean off of the roof area of the bedroom. And there was also blood spatter throughout here as well. And some of these were in various stages of being cleaned. And then here's a close-up of some of that had not been cleaned yet, and it was also all over that panoramic picture. So we were looking at the bed just now, and the ceiling with the spatter was about here. This is another shot. This room is the bathroom. It goes to that room. There's a TV over here, and as you can see, there are numerous cleaning products over here and even on the bed as well, and the bed has been stripped of sheets and the comforter. This shows just a wider angle of that, so you can see the cleaning supplies and things that are being taken there. And I ask you just kind of notice this piece of furniture because we're about to see a close-up of that area that you can identify based on the furniture. And so here, all through here, is blood that had cleaning supplies and other things dumped on it. Aaron was killed on the bed from the different blood above the bed and things of that nature, and then drug into the bathroom. His blood was found on the door of the bathroom shower in there as well as in other places. And there's a significant amount of blood that had pooled here because they cut the carpet, and then you can see that it had already sunk through the different layers and into the subfloor. And then this is that shower that I mentioned where Aaron's blood was found both inside and on the door handle leading to the shower. This is how officers found it. So these gloves belong to the defendant, and he must have worn them at some point in either his cleanup or his attempted dismemberment. This is a fallen tree root ball in the woods off of Tumlin Drive. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a church at the dead end, and it's surrounded by woods. If you go into those woods a little bit, there is this tree bulb, and there's kind of a crevice here. This is where officers were able to uncover the body of Aaron Davis. You can see that they're kind of down into that crevice, and they're beginning to uncover him here. He was wrapped in the sheets and comforter from that upstairs bedroom. He was also wrapped in duct tape as well. That duct tape the defendant had purchased at Walmart after the murder, and his fingerprints were on it. I did want to talk about the injuries to Aaron because they were significant, and I believe that there's certainly evidence of aggravating circumstances. So a total of 40 stab wounds, 6 to his head, 4 to his neck, 21 to the torso, 2 to the left upper extremity, and 7 to the right upper extremity. There was also attempted dismemberment around his abdomen and around one of his arms and shoulder area, but we believe that the dismemberment happened after. I do have a few photos, not many, just to show some of these injuries because I'm going to talk about the level of hemorrhage associated with the injuries. So this is the front and back of Aaron. The injuries have been labeled by the medical examiner with the letter system. And I did want to, there's significant injuries to the neck, both in the front and the back. There are also injuries down along this side. Those begin with I and go into JKL. And I'll show a different angle of those later. But I also want to highlight that there are not injuries on Aaron's hands. Aaron didn't have any defensive wounds. Aaron didn't see this coming. Aaron didn't defend himself. This was not a case of mutual combat or anything like that. He does not have any defensive marks on his hands. Here's a side view of those wounds that I mentioned, I, J, K, L, M, and N. And I'm going to put up a diagram now that shows these injuries but on a drawing instead of the autopsy photos. So this is color-coded. Pink means that there is hemorrhage, and what hemorrhage indicates is that Aaron's heart was beating, and so his blood was pumping through his body. So those injuries that I talked about on the side over here that we saw a picture of a moment ago, those all have pink. So his heart was beating, his blood was pumping. Also those neck injuries that I pointed out, same thing, on here and here and here. A pink, meaning his heart was beating. Most of the colors on here are pink. The orange means minimal hemorrhage. It means that the level of hemorrhage was less, most likely because the heart was beating less, or it was beating slower. In other words, Aaron was dying at that point. So orange means he was still alive, but his heartbeat was weaker and slower. No color on the chart means that there was no hemorrhage. It doesn't necessarily mean post-mortem, but it does mean that his heart wasn't beating at a level to cause a hemorrhage. Most of the marks on here are color-coded. And what that means is that Aaron was alive when this happened. And for the majority of these horrific wounds, Aaron's heart was beating and there was hemorrhage and he was alive. And then the next level of wounds shows again the orange hemorrhage, meaning his heartbeat was slower, it was weaker at that point. I will point out that these shaded areas are parts of the dismemberment that we saw in the autopsy photos as well. And again, that is believed to have happened post-mortem or after Aaron's death. Also, part of the autopsy, a portion of the small intestine was missing, and it's believed that it was removed through this area of dismemberment there. In contrast to the significant injuries Aaron had, these are the only marks that were on the defendant. A scrape or scratch here on his side, and then a cut on his pinky finger, And it may be a little bit hard to see on the screen, but there is some type of bruising on on the defendant's knuckles. I submit to you that those injuries were incurred by the defendant in the attack. Again, this is not a situation of mutual combat. This is not a situation where Aaron fought back. The defendant was the only aggressor and the only person offering violence when this happened. I next want to talk about some of the steps the defendant took to try to cover up this crime after it happened. Charlie Girl Schellinger is the girlfriend of Aaron, and Aaron was actually on his way to see her, and he was just stopping in Rome at his best friend's house on the way to go see her. It was unusual for Aaron and Charlie Girl not to communicate frequently. And so when she had not heard from him, and the last time she heard from him was in the early evening of Thursday the 10th. When she still hadn't heard from Aaron the next day, she then reaches out to Brandon because she knows that that's where Aaron had been staying. And he starts telling her, he's with me, but his phone is dead. Talks about telling him, they're on a walk right now. He still hasn't charged it, stuff like that. At this point, Aaron is dead. And what the defendant is doing is lying and attempting to cover up his crime. And then it gets to a level where she is continuing to be persistent. And so this is on the 11th, this one might be the 12th. But she is still kind of wondering what's going on, and here's where the defendant comes up with a new story that Aaron has gone home to Cumming, Georgia to get a Switch, which is presumably a Nintendo Switch, a type of game, and that he is then going to go to Alabama the next day. So that is what he is explaining as to where Aaron could be or why Aaron is no longer responding. He then begins to sort of feign concern, and that he too hasn't heard from Aaron, things like that. And at one point he even tells her that he's going to start looking, and he actually does do that. He does show up at Heritage Park, feigning concern for Aaron and offering to try to help join into the search for Aaron. Of course, he's only offering to start looking after Charlie Girl has let him know that she and her family are on the way to Rome to start the search for themselves. I also want to talk about his internet searches in the time. So November 10th, they start here and go this way. He searches for Cosmic Dog Outpost. We know that that's where he took Aaron on Thursday night. They were at Cosmic Dog for about an hour, around 7:45. The defendant ordered drinks for them. He ordered two different, they each had 2 beers, but they were high content alcohol beers. And that's significant because Aaron was not a drinker. It was part of his faith, so it was not something that Aaron did frequently. And the defendant ordered very high alcohol content drinks for them both, and he paid. And so we just know this kind of just indicate he had looked up Cosmic Dog, and they do ultimately go there. We know that they go after Cosmic Dog to Giggity's, where the defendant again pays and orders drinks from them. And after that, they return to the defendant's residence. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I want to continue on with the internet searches. So in this one, and these start over here and go in this direction. So this is on November 11th, Friday. At this point, Aaron is dead. The defendant has already killed Aaron. And he is searching over and over for sheets and blankets. More than 20 searches for sheets and blankets. What he's trying to do is find a replacement for the sheets and blanket that Aaron is ultimately going to be buried in. He's trying to find a replacement set so that the bedroom will appear unchanged, and again to cover up his crime. These are his searches on that day continued. And I'll highlight just a few of them. Professional stain remover. Does Walmart have duct tape? Schizophrenia symptoms. Hydrochloric acid. Best secluded locations. how to drain washing machine, and more searches for the sheets and blanket. And all of these indicate that he is trying to cover up his crime. He's looking for stain remover to try to get the blood out of the carpet. He ultimately does go to Walmart later that day, around 6 p.m., and he does purchase duct tape, and he uses that duct tape to wrap Aaron in the blankets that he's ultimately buried in. Hydrochloric acid is famous because Jeffrey Dahmer used that on some of his victims. That was a search that the defendant made. Best secluded locations. Ultimately, he buried Aaron in a secluded location, so that was part of his search of what to do with the body. So at this point, he has not buried Aaron because he doesn't have the duct tape and he hasn't found the location yet. And how to drain a washing machine, we know from officers that the next day they're going to discover bloody sheets in the washing room. And so he's already concerned because he's been using the washing machine to try to clean these things. Also, in between his searches to cover up his crime, he's also watching videos from No Country for Old Men, which is a horror movie that focuses on a murderer. That's the main character, and his violent crimes and as he goes out. And one of the videos that the defendant specifically watches is a scene where the murderer has been injured and he needs to go to a pharmacy. So he blows up a car to create a distraction to go into a pharmacy. The defendant was also injured at this time. He's later going to search on for what to do about the cut on his finger. But just interesting that in between all of these searches about what to do with his best friend's body, he's also watching videos from a horror movie about a violent killer. All right, and so on Saturday, November 12th, he is still looking up carpet cleaning crew, also water damage restoration, and a company called Chattanooga Blood Spill Cleanup, and how to clean blood out of carpet. So there's the Chattanooga blood spill, how to clean blood out of carpet, the water drainage here. In the days leading up to this, he had some interesting internet searches as well. One of those was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest book. It's a famous book, but the premise is that the person is going to be convicted of a serious crime, and so they feign insanity in order to go to a mental institution instead of prison. He also looks up multiple times 10 tips for dealing with guilt, and then there's some typos in this, but what I believe it is trying to say is tricks to feel less guilty. So this is a timetable of some of the defendant's actions, and also kind of giving us the time frame of what was going on with the defendant, what was going on with Aaron. So at 2:40 p.m., Aaron Davis texts the defendant that he's leaving right now and asks for the address. And the defendant responds with his residence off of Collingwood. We know that at 7:48, both the defendant and Aaron were at Cosmic Dog. As I mentioned earlier, they each drink 2 beers. The defendant pays. The defendant also ordered those drinks. And again, Aaron wasn't a drinker. The defendant was kind of taking the wheel in this situation. They both go to Giggity's afterwards. Again, the defendant pays. He makes a $28.18 purchase. Giggity's is a sports bar. At 9:57 p.m. is the last time Aaron texts Charlie Girl. So that's the last time that Aaron communicated with anyone, besides the defendant. At 11:29, Charlie Girl has sent several messages to Aaron, but she hasn't received a response from him. On Friday, November 11th, there's a text right after noon between the defendant and Charlie Girl where the defendant says that Aaron is with him, but just that his phone has died. At 6 o'clock, the defendant enters Walmart, selects duct tape, looks at carpet cleaner, purchases the duct tape, and then buys himself food from Subway. But at 6:08, he texts Charlie Girl the ruse about Aaron going back to his house and coming to get the switch and going to her house the next day. So at the same time he is buying duct tape to wrap up Aaron's body, he is texting Aaron's girlfriend a lie to cover his tracks and to give himself a reason as to why Aaron would be missing that is not him. At 11:24 on Friday, November 11th, helicopter pad camera from the hospital across the street from Heritage Park captures video of a vehicle rolling into a ditch in Heritage Park. That vehicle, of course, is the Prius, which is going to be found the following day. But on Saturday, November 12th, the defendant calls Aaron's phone twice around just after 9 a.m. in the morning. He knows Aaron is dead. Aaron has been dead for over a day at this point, but he's trying to make it look like he didn't know. He's trying to set up this sort of, defense or alibi for himself. It's calculated. He also reaches out to Rachel, that is his stepmother, and in a couple slides I'll explain why that is significant as well. At 10:41, the car is found at Heritage Park. And between 11:04 a.m. and 11:23 a.m., the defendant is being seen in urgent care for the cut to his finger. Around noon, the defendant tells Charlie Girl he's going to start looking for Aaron. And a little after 1, he calls Aaron's phone twice. Again, he knows Aaron is dead, but he's trying to make it look like he doesn't. And then at some point between 12:30 and 1:51, while officers are in Heritage Park beginning the search, and it's changing from a suspicious vehicle to a missing persons, during that time, the defendant actually shows up at Heritage Park, and he does speak with officers, and he gives a story of he and Aaron having been out drinking the night before, Aaron getting sick, and him waking up to Aaron already gone the following morning. He left Heritage Park, and 2 officers decided to do a follow-up with him, so they go at 2:20 to his residence. At 2:29, they receive consent to search his residence. Interestingly, as the officers are about to enter the home for the consent search, after the defendant has given consent, he begins stretching. You can see this on camera. He starts doing several stretches. Officers are not in the house for very long before they find the blood in the scene upstairs, as well as the bloody sheets in the washer and dryer. And at the point that they go into the laundry room, the defendant flees. So that's at 2:42 p.m. And he flees by running. Officers do give chase, but they are unable to catch up to him. By 7:30 that evening on Saturday, Jeremy Risner, the father of the defendant, calls to say that he is bringing the defendant to the police station in 15 minutes. They do show up. When they do, Jeremy Risner is visibly shaken. The defendant appeared normal, and Jeremy Risner gives the location of Aaron's body to police. This is a post-murder to-do list that the defendant created in his phone. When I Get Home, schedule last 3 songs. That is a reference to his YouTube channel where he did post music. He wrote quite a few songs and performed them and had some of them on a YouTube channel. Number 2, vacuum. Number 3, laundry. Number 4, shower in my shower. That's important because Aaron was dismembered in the guest shower, so he's making a reminder to himself to shower in his own shower and not the shower he used to attempt to dismember his best friend's body. He also says to take a bath, so again, a preoccupation with cleaning, possibly to try to remove evidence that may still be on his body. And again, vacuum and laundry, these are related again to his attempt to cover up. But then he also he makes a written reminder to basically create an alibi defense via text to his stepmother, Rachel, by saying, text Rachel that Aaron threw up horribly. I think there was some blood in it. I woke up and he was gone. So he actually wrote down what his cover story was going to be in this post-murder to-do list. And we know from his phone records that he actually called Rachel that following morning. So he did follow his own to-do list in that regard. Here's a picture of how the to-do list appeared on the phone. So you can see this is the portion that I just showed on the screen. And the to-do list is longer. There are other things, other notes. Some are like clothing measurements and things of that nature. Some talk about him applying to BYU Hawaii or taking classes or going on auditions. There's a part about, and it is right over here, where he makes a note to let them speak even if you don't think they will. Look at them till they do. Gaze into eyes for a moment before answering. Memorize lines. Go to gym. Do audition. And then after that, apply for BYU Hawaii, go to church, some other things. So he's still making plans for his life. He's thinking about auditions. He's thinking about taking additional classes. He's thinking about applying to BYU Hawaii. He's still making active plans about his future at a time where he has permanently ended Aaron's life. And this just kind of shows how this is just the end of that document, how it does go on. Like I mentioned earlier, there's some measurements for clothing. There's a lot of stuff in here, but he does also kind of keep a list of what he had done, that he woke up, that he watched a Millie Bobby Brown short, that he brushed his teeth, put in his contacts, ate 2 chocolate muffins, and had a glass of W. So the way notes are organized on the phone is the most recently edited appear first. So this one actually was on top of the post-murder to-do list, which means it had been edited or looked at or worked on after that. And since we know that the post-murder to-do list had been created after the murder, this also was created after the murder. This appears to be some of his lyrics for a song. And the ones I want to highlight are right here. He screamed till he choked on his own tongue and blood. His scream became a gargle as he swallowed his tongue. I believe the defendant is describing Aaron's death. His scream became a gargle as he swallowed his own tongue. If you'll remember in his to-do list, the very first one was about his music. Music was clearly very important to the defendant. And so this was a newer song, but he also had some of his older songs that he had created prior to the murder. And I've pulled one of those here. It's entitled What You Do. And I'll highlight what I think is important here. It doesn't matter what you do. Go kill someone, go love someone. You can't plan the future. God decided it for you. It's fine to think that I'm just a little toy. And if these are indicative of his philosophy, that is a dangerous philosophy. It is one that shirks all accountability. If there's no free will and everything is predestined, then there's also no consequences for actions, and there's also no reason to ever exercise restraint. And so that is a dangerous philosophy. And it also is a philosophy that doesn't demonstrate remorse. There's no remorse in that type of philosophy because it doesn't matter. We've talked a lot about the defendant's actions leading up to and after that day, but I want to take a little bit to talk about Aaron and what Aaron was doing on that day. On Thursday, November 10th, on what would become the last full day of Aaron's life, he woke up early to take the GACE exam, which is an assessment in Georgia for educators. He had previously graduated from BYU-Idaho with a degree in political science and an emphasis in statistics. He wanted to pursue professionally a career in education or the law or a combination of the two. He was excited about his performance on the test, sharing with friends and family that he had aced it. He was also excited to see his girlfriend Charlie Girl, who lived in Alabama, as they were long distance and he'd recently been busy studying for that exam. His texts to Charlie Girl that day show his excitement both for their upcoming reunion as well as his love for her. The defendant's residence was never meant to be Aaron's final destination. It was merely meant to be a midway point on Aaron's trip to see Charlie Girl. At this time, I will call up some of Aaron's loved ones to speak, starting with Maurizio Bullardick, who is going to read his own statement as well as those of friends Marissa Dentino and Kyle Jose.
Come up, sir. Before you get started, your name again?
It's Maurizio Bullardick.
Can you spell that, please?
It's Maurizio, and then Bulllerdick.
E-R.
Of the three statements, I'm going to start with Marissa Dentino's first. Losing Aaron was the
Wait,
beginning.
just a second.
Oh,
The
sorry.
name of that person,
Marissa
Marissa,
Dentino.
how do you spell that?
The last name? It's
Never mind, the court reporter has that, okay.
Oh, okay. She states, losing Aaron was the beginning of the darkest period of my life. It sent me into a negative downward spiral that I am only just recently beginning to come out of. And I know I am not alone in this. Aaron and I were close friends, living in the same neighborhood in high school. We saw each other one time when we were in college, and it almost didn't even happen. I'm so glad it did, because even before his death, it was one of my most prominent happy memories, because even in the time we hadn't seen each other, absolutely nothing had changed. Aaron was the kind of person who was kind and open to everybody, all the time. I learned of my good friend's passing through a Google search after hearing he was missing the night before. Learning the monster behind it was even more shocking. Everyone who knew Aaron will attest to his loving and accepting nature. Aaron trusted and loved Brandon. They were best friends. A lot of the times I would walk across our neighborhood to see Aaron. Brandon would be there too. Brandon took advantage of Aaron's kind and accepting nature, and I truly hope this court shows Brandon none of that kindness, because he doesn't deserve any more, ever again. Brandon should go away for life with no parole. The nature and severity of what he did to Aaron makes it clear that he is a threat to society. If he was able to do all this to his best friend, who never ever once doubted him or harmed him, he could do it to anyone. Aaron's memory deserves justice, and it is crucial for the safety of the community that Brandon is held accountable for his evil and disgusting actions. The next statement is from Kyle Jose. Aaron Davis was my best friend of over 10 years. He introduced me to my favorite TV shows, my favorite movies. I've since become a filmmaker, putting all of my effort into it, and am actively working on sets. It's my career. It's my career because of Aaron. Without the things he showed me, I never would have had the passion that I currently do. We also had multiple serious talks about getting an apartment together. We were both really excited about it and talked about it all the time. We never argued, never fought. We agreed on almost everything, and we would watch movies and TV shows together like they were the only things that mattered. We would have been the perfect roommates for each other. It never got to happen. There were times where Aaron felt like my only friend, and for a long time after we graduated, he was the only person that I went to high school with that I still spoke to. Not only did those 10 plus years with him shape my entire middle school, high school, and college life and beyond, his influence will continue to affect my life until the day that I die. I believe Aaron should get life without parole, which is frankly a kinder fate than what he gave to Aaron. I hope that time will allow him to think about what he did and how it has horribly affected everyone who loved Aaron, and how it will continue to horribly affect everyone for all of our futures. The last statement is of my own. The loss of Aaron has impacted me greatly over these past couple of years. I think of Aaron daily, looking back at the many conversations and good times we shared, from 3 prom parties, many late night walks together, surviving band class, band camp, discussing movies, TV shows, and the brutality of Nerf wars. I never fully realized how much he meant to me, mostly because I never expected to lose him. No one did. He was a friend I could count on, someone who inspired me to be a better version of myself when I was growing up from middle to high school. The way he kept a calm and intelligent composure while balancing a positive attitude was something I always admired about Aaron. The reason why I believe you, Brandon Risner, should get life in prison without parole is because it solidifies the trajectory of your life to being stagnant, which is equal to the current physical state of Aaron as we speak. I hope being in that cell forces you to think about what you have stolen from the Davis's family and the potential future Aaron was working so hard to achieve. Aaron considered Brandon to be his childhood's best friend. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Next, Charlie Grohl Schellinger.
Good afternoon. I'll hear from you.
My name is Charlie Girl Skellinger. I am the victim's girlfriend. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. Aaron Davis was and is the love of my life. I will never be the same for having known him. He loved me, and I loved him. I could tell you 100 love stories, and it would not do justice to how wonderful he was. No one has ever understood me quite like he did. To him, I was seen for my soul. His death shattered me. I was a fragment of who I am. When I received the news that Aaron was dead, after running all through Rome in the freezing cold looking for my love, I collapsed outside of a gas station in front of an ice machine, and I could not stop screaming. That first night, I slept in my mom's bed. I couldn't sleep without waking myself up crying. I couldn't be alone in the dark anymore because I would see Brandon's face lurking around dark corners. It was a blow when we found out Aaron's personal items were missing. We never got Aaron's phone back. I've had nightmares about it since that day. Losing someone's phone feels like losing another little piece of them. Aaron and I had special bracelets with the planets on them we got for our 3-month anniversary. He kept his bracelet in his car because he wanted to be able to wear it every time we were together. Aaron was infamous for his bright shirts and sense of style, and some of his most iconic ones were packed for the weekend we had just planned that day. These items, with so much sentimental value, are lost to us. I had hinged so much of my healing on being able to see Aaron's body one more time, and another blow came when we were denied that opportunity for our own good. The damage to his body was too much. I never got to say goodbye. I never got to hold his hand or touch his face one more time, or touch his hair or hug him. I got to kiss a cold casket and hope that he knew how dearly I loved him. We had so many plans for our future and the life we were building together. Thanksgivings and Christmases, family traditions. We wanted to go to the beach together. It was his favorite place. He was one of the most wonderful people to be around. We wanted to have kids and raise them together. He especially wanted a daughter. He loved the idea of all the little experiences that would come with being a girl dad. We talked about being in the delivery room and him getting to do skin-to-skin contact and having that bonding moment. We wanted a wedding where both of our families could be together to celebrate, to be there for our first dance. We wanted to be married for time and eternity. But because of a man he called his best friend, who surely would have been one of his groomsmen, Aaron and I will never have these opportunities. It has been torture to live with this new reality. I met Aaron a little over 2 years ago now, and I am still as in love with him as I was the first time I told him I loved him. I don't know that I'll ever be able to move on, to live with the guilt being the only one living our shared dreams. But I have been blessed beyond measure to have had the opportunity to experience true love in my lifetime.
How did you meet him?
It was at a church camp out. It was in Alabama. They were playing a get to know you game, and he stood up and he said his name, and I said, "That's it. That's the one. I'm gonna remember his name." We actually had our first kiss there under shooting stars.
Okay, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I'm gonna read a little piece
Sure.
of the love letter he sent me, if that's okay.
Sure.
And this is Aaron writing this to me. Even if the flap of a butterfly's wing causes one of us to die in an accident, or 1,000 monsters managed to bring me down, will always have back then, and I would rather spend the rest of my life missing you than never having known you. I think you're the most talented, funny, smartest, and more beautiful girl I know. You light up the world with every smile, and you genuinely glow, changing from moonlight to sunlight. You constantly surprise me with just how wonderful a person can be, and I didn't know I could love someone as much as I love you.
Nice.
We'll call Randy Davis.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
I'm Randy Davis. I'm Aaron's father. It's okay if I go ahead and read what I've written?
It is.
So November 12th, 2022, our 20-month ongoing nightmare began. We have always been a close and loving family with deep commitment to each other, faith, and the community. On November 12th, 2022, I received a call from the Rome Police Department that my car that my son Aaron had been using was found in a ravine here in Rome, Georgia. As far as we knew, Aaron should have been at his girlfriend's house in Alabama the day before, so this was certainly unexpected. Since Aaron was staying in Rome the night of November 10th at the home of Brandon Risner, I called Brandon immediately to let him know and ask him if he knew why the car would be there. Brandon acted concerned and mentioned that Aaron had stayed an extra day in Rome, and then he noticed that he had left sometime during the night before. With a few additional phone calls, Brandon added speculation as to what might have happened or where he may have been going, such as going home to receive that Nintendo Switch game system that was mentioned previously. He also mentioned to me that Aaron may have been suicidal and tried to kill himself. Brandon even came down to the site where the car was found and attempted to search for Aaron, all the while knowing what he had really done, and in the middle of attempting to hide the evidence in his own home. So although life has changed in so many ways since that day, let me focus on three main changes that I can think of. The first is the loss of the potential of my son and all the potential that he had. Aaron had worked so hard to be where he was at that day. He was 21. He had, while he was in high school, his final 2 years, he had been taking college classes so that he could get ahead, and then he committed to serve a 2-year mission for our church, which was unfortunately cut short because of COVID. But he did complete his college education. Just that summer of 2022, he had finished his last internship, which was a law internship with my nephew up in North Carolina. And he had just come home and was so excited. He had just felt like he had just kind of hit that check mark where he was ready to launch off into life. He had decided that he wasn't convinced yet that law school was for him, and so but he thought he would be a great teacher. So the morning before driving to Rome, he had aced the GACE exam required for applying for a teaching certificate program. He would have been an amazing teacher and could have impacted many lives that way. His long-range goal was to become a college professor if he ultimately decided that law school was not for him. It's such a tragedy to me that so much potential was wasted due to the defendant's actions. Aaron was in love, as we've just heard. He would have been an engaged father and husband when the time was right. I will miss the opportunity to see all these dreams that he be realized, and I'm saddened that I won't be able to witness these life opportunities. Secondly, our family has suffered from this atrocity. Aaron always brought the fun to the house, whether it be entertaining the kids at younger siblings' birthday parties, recommending TV shows and movies to the family, jumping on the trampoline with siblings, or in countless other ways. He was the roommate and like the other pea in a pod with his older brother Luke, who's now 26. My daughter Lorelai, 21. Aaron was his confidant. He was the person that she could go to and talk to about any issues that she had. He was the best friend of his now 16-year-old sister Phoebe as well. He was the bringer of fun and video game buddy of my 13-year-old son Micah. Well, today would be his 13th birthday. We should be home celebrating that today. He was a friend and confidant to all his siblings. He taught me other ways of looking at situations and issues. He was my son and friend to all. I love him. Brandon was a family friend who had been involved with all of our family outings, it seemed, meals and activities for years. how can we go on trusting anyone fully after witnessing what someone that we had trusted so much brutally murder and eviscerate my son? Thirdly, the personal impacts on me include so many sleepless nights and waking up with a rush of terror, anger, and confusion regarding why my son was murdered, and often losing sleep the rest of the night. Due to the mutilation of his body, I've not had the opportunity, until today, to see even pictures of my son, let alone identify his body. I had only heard somewhat vague descriptions of what was done to him. In some ways, this has made it worse, as I've had to picture it in my mind to come to some sort of closure. I will never fully understand what led to this, but I know that I can never recommend that Mr. Risner be allowed to be free anymore. At the time, I was a member of a bishopric, which is a lay ministry position in our congregation at church.
What was that?
I was a member of the bishopric.
Bishopric.
So a lay minister in our church, in the lay ministry. But decided I needed to give that up in order to spend more time with my family when we were in the pews at church, mostly with my kids and my wife having difficulty and needing someone there with them. At the time of the murders, I was working as a home care physical therapist and had a clientele that I worked with multiple times a week. I had to give up all that clientele and ultimately switch jobs as an immediate impact of what happened, just because I couldn't continue working at that time, planning for a funeral, planning for trying to figure out what was going on and trying to put my life back together. The psychological scars from betrayal from one who we treated like a son or brother is irreparable. Every time I hear my son Micah refer to murdering an opponent in a video game, I feel pain. I work with elderly people at an assisted living center now who are naturally conversational when I discuss and always ask me, how many children do you have? Instead of answering 5, which is correct, I usually have to answer 4 because I don't want to get into that with them. I don't need to burden them with what's going on in my life. But it's a challenge for me. I've been waiting for this day to try to begin healing from this, as it's still hard to fathom whether this is a real event and that he's not just away at college still. I've done what I can to try to keep myself as busy as possible, working, having a secondary job that I work on, trying to spend time with the family, being active at all times in order to not let my mind have to think about what happened. I do believe in both justice and mercy. I believe that justice can be best satisfied as Aaron will not be coming back. The best justice would be for the defendant never to be allowed out of custody again. I do hope that he can find mercy with God and seek help while in custody to be able to plead with God for his mercy at the appropriate time. Beyond the hideousness of the crime itself is the ability to hide those intentions, a total lack of remorse such that I would never be satisfied, no matter how cooperative he would be in prison, that he could ever be trusted again. I feel that it would be wrong to make any recommendation other than life in prison without the possibility of parole for someone capable of committing a crime like this. Tell his other friends that he's doing better than ever while simultaneously covering up this hideous act and lying to us about what happened, even to the point of trying to make us believe that our son had tried to take his own life. As a father and husband, I've tried to be the stoic and strong one, especially as this has caused so much distress for my wife, Sarah. I fear that I haven't done this as well as I've done enough as I try to understand this myself. I hope that no one has to go through what Aaron and our entire family has endured at the hands of Brandon Risner. Thank you.
Just a second.
Sure.
Tell me about Aaron. What kind of personality did he have? What did he like to do?
As we talked about, mentioned a few times, he loved movies and television, but he was really an intellectual at times. I was just looking actually at his a Christmas wish list that he had. Included books from Dostoevsky. It included books from his favorite philosophers that he liked to read. This is not someone that was out looking for run-of-the-mill stuff. Those are the kind of things he did in his free time. He'd have 3 or 4 books that he'd be reading, completing those, and he'd like to discuss things on a very deep level. He was an amazing young man.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Sarah Davis.
Aaron Davis is the second oldest of 5 children to my husband and I. Aaron was so loved and adored by his siblings. Aaron had an extraordinarily close bond with his siblings, who are named Luke, Lorelai, Phoebe, and Micah. I have never seen my kids get into a fight. They just loved each other so much. Luke and Aaron had such an amazing connection and shared a lot of same interest. For example, whenever I would be on a video phone with Luke and Aaron would come into the room, I became invisible because as soon as they would see each other, they would light up and start talking very fast and animated, changing from one subject to another with never a break in the conversation. They would laugh and giggle, and this happened every single time they talked. When Luke was on his 2-year church mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the rules at the time was he was only allowed to call home twice a year, once on Mother's Day and once at Christmas. We FaceTime him those times, and I barely got a word in because Aaron and Luke were overjoyed to talk to each other, and they were talking so fast and excited that I couldn't get a word in. My daughter Phoebe was 14 years old when Aaron was murdered. Aaron and Phoebe would call each other BFFs, best friends forever. Aaron would greet Phoebe by saying, "Hi, BFF." Aaron and Phoebe would hold hands and walk miles around our neighborhood, discussing movies, TV shows, music, philosophy, and religion. Aaron and his siblings were very affectionate, hugging, holding hands. Lorelai, who is currently living in Japan, serving an 18-month mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, shared her thoughts about Aaron and said, quote, "Aaron is someone I can fully be myself around and not hold back any part of my personality. He is someone I know I can always count on for advice and comfort. We have so much fun discussing movies, books, and video games. We love Jake the dog from Adventure Time, open door philosophy, which basically means always saying yes when you have the chance to try something new or learn a new skill. Because of this, we love to try new things together. Aaron has taught me to be adventurous, inquisitive, and open-minded," unquote. Micah was 11 years old when Aaron was murdered, and he counted on Aaron to be there to help him while growing up and beyond. Aaron would organize and plan Nerf gun battles with fun and different rules to play at Micah's birthday. All I had to do was provide the food, and Aaron organized all the games. It's Micah's birthday today, and he should be here celebrating with my son. He organized whenever Micah had friends over. He helped play with them. Micah just loved how Aaron would play with him. Shortly before Aaron was murdered, I overheard Aaron 4 different times saying to Micah, quote, "Mr. Micah, I picked out a game for us to play together," unquote. Micah has autism, and he doesn't have people. And Brandon took the person he had, the cooler older brother that would play with him. Brandon knew how much Aaron's siblings needed and loved him, but Brandon stabbed Aaron to death, made him suffer first with that knowledge that Aaron was so needed. Aaron was a very obedient, loving, and caring son. He listened and obeyed Randy and myself. Aaron brought so much joy to us as parents, and we was so looking forward to his future. When Brandon stabbed Aaron to death, he also stabbed Randy, Luke, Lorelai, Phoebe, and Micah, and I in the heart. He ripped our hearts out. We have been so devastated by the evil actions of Brandon. Aaron's future was brighter than the sun. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in political science with an emphasis in statistics from Brigham Young University, Idaho. He loved democracy, freedom, and was very involved in studying political issues before he voted. He made sure he always voted. On the day I believe Aaron was murdered, he had taken the GACE test in political science. He texted me after the test that he had passed and scored very high. This test was so he could become a high school government or law teacher. It was also so he could get a master's degree in teaching political science. He told Randy and I that eventually he wanted to get his PhD and become a political science professor. He also told us that becoming a lawyer was not off the table. His friend said, Aaron's main goal in life was to get married and have a family. Our hopes and dreams shattered when Aaron was murdered. Aaron earned the highest rank in Boy Scouts, the Eagle Scout Award. He really did emulate the Scout values of being trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Aaron was a good, kind, and loving person who would have kept changing the world for the better. Aaron was a philosopher. He read 200-year-old philosophy books just for fun. Loved to analyze movies. He loved to read and analyze books. He played the trombone, piano, and sang. When Aaron would be walking by himself around the house or elsewhere, he would frequently sing to himself or hum and make music with his voice. I treasured sitting next to Aaron at church, singing the church hymns together. Every Sunday we were together. He sang with heart and believed the words he was singing. Aaron had a great love of learning and was constantly reading 5 different books at the same time on all different subjects. The day before Aaron died, Aaron came into my room to talk to me while I was lying in bed. We talked about different books we have read, and he told me all the books he was planning on reading next. I've been in so much pain knowing I'll never have a late night talk with him again, and all his future plans are buried with him. Aaron loved to play all different kinds of board games that required stratagem, and that's something he would do with all his siblings. They really liked to play board games together. And when my daughter Phoebe's birthday was soon after Aaron was murdered, and all she asked for were board games, but no one to play them with. Aaron loved to jump on the trampoline with friends and siblings. He was a good leader in a household of Nerf gun battles. He was a good listener and peacemaker. Aaron loved to be goofy, be funny, and laugh and make people laugh. One way he expressed this is by writing movie scripts and then casting his siblings and friends in the movie and then posting it on Luke's YouTube channel called The Bigger Fish. Of course, the movies were completely weird and silly. Also, Luke and Aaron decided to critique a very obscure show called The Ewok Adventures and post it on The Bigger Fish. It was just a way to be silly and express themselves. Oh, Aaron made everything so fun and had such an enthusiasm for life. He did marching band and theater in North Forsyth High School. He loved to hike and go on walks. He enjoyed being in nature. He played baseball, soccer, frisbee golf, and pickleball. He loved to dance and took 2 ballroom social dance classes at college. For the last 2 years of high school, he was a full-time student at the University of North Georgia. Aaron was a hard worker and worked to pay for college and his other expenses. The different jobs he had were he worked at a restaurant, Walmart, enzyme remediation, doing mold removal. He was a movie extra. He sold his plasma. He worked at a call center. He worked at a haunted house in Rexburg. He was a teacher's assistant at BYU-Idaho. He worked at Gabe Zeller Law Firm in Reidsville, North Carolina. And lastly, when he was murdered, he was employed at Zero Odor in Alpharetta. Aaron is a disciple of Jesus Christ. He graduated from 4 years of seminary. He's an ordained priest and elder in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Aaron was a missionary. I have precious memories of going to the temple together with Aaron to do endowment sessions. Aaron sent me a private message one time that said, quote, I happened to finish reading the Book of Mormon again today, and I think Moroni is my new favorite book in the Book of Mormon. It is so cool how the book ends by setting the foundation and rules for the church that I've gone to every Sunday, unquote. This is such an Aaron statement because he was always analyzing. Aaron posted a post on his Facebook page that reads, quote, "The Book of Moroni in the Book of Mormon is amazing. I'd like to challenge y'all to read it," unquote. He also posted another time that reads, quote, "Hello, friends. I would just like to testify unto you that God has a plan for us. I would recommend you all read Doctrine and Covenants section 76, verses 50 to 70, unquote. Brandon stole Aaron's life by murdering him and broke our hearts and devastated our lives. I have cried every day for a year and a half. I've had a hard time sleeping since Aaron's murder, and when I do, I have nightmares of Aaron being stabbed to death. Some people in our household had a fear of Brandon coming to our house and stabbing them to get death. And when they hear noises at night, they think it's Brandon breaking in, coming to murder everybody. Every day I would have to tell myself that no matter how much I cried or begged God, Aaron is not coming back. My brain liked to go into denial. I've missed a lot of joyful occasions because I was too depressed to go because of Aaron's murder. I missed my daughter Lorelei's college graduation with a bachelor's degree from BYU, Hawaii, because I was too depressed about Aaron's murder and had to stay in bed. I believe Brandon carefully planned Aaron's murder. Brandon found a huge hole in the woods, and his evil mind started coming up with a plan. We have never known Aaron to drink alcohol. After Aaron was murdered, we learned that Brandon and Aaron were drinking the night Aaron was murdered. I talked to Luke and a close friend who both went to college and knew Aaron in high school if he had ever known Aaron to drink. They both told me, no, Aaron never drank alcohol. Aaron was dead, so there was no need to cover for him. I think Brandon peer-pressured Aaron into drinking for the first time that night, so his defenses were down. I talked to Brandon several times right after Aaron was murdered because I was looking for Aaron, and Brandon was very calculated in changing a story when I would catch him in a lie. One lie Brandon told me while my kids, Phoebe and Michael, were listening was, "I think Aaron killed himself." He was really depressed, and you have no idea about your son, he said. The day Brandon murdered Aaron, Brandon called his friend Silas. Brandon told Silas how happy he was. He said his life was going great. Brandon said, "I have a girlfriend, my life is great." Brandon was his normal self during that conversation, even though he had stabbed my son to death and mutilated his body and made Aaron suffer. This showed Brandon has no remorse and is happy about what he did. I've cooked and served Brandon thousands of dinners at my house over the years. And he's slept over at my house many, many times. He's seemed to spend more time at my house than his own. I've seen Aaron and Brandon interact. I was always home and they were always at my house, and I always witnessed and observed Aaron being so kind to Brandon, making Brandon lunch, talking to him nicely. When Brandon and Aaron drove out to Idaho, Aaron let Brandon sleep on the nice bed, Aaron on a little baby bed. Aaron was always kind to Brandon. And I was right there to witness it because Brandon and Aaron were always at my house. In October, before he spent a lot of nights at my house in October, and then Brandon murdered Aaron in November, and he was all the while planning to murder my son while I'm cooking for him, taking him out to eat, taking him to the fair. Brandon is the worst type of evil, where he chose to stab Aaron to death and caused such a tremendous loss and pain to those who treated him with love. Brandon deserves to serve life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Anything further?
Not at this time.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back to the defense.
Read my mind, Judge.
Mr. Heller,
Sir.
is there any one you would like to speak on behalf of your client?
Yes, Judge.
Okay,
His father and mother,
all right.
Mr. Jeremy Risner and Mrs. Jenny Pleaded.
Bring them up.
Much like the state, they have prepared statements.
Pardon me?
Much like the state, they have prepared statements.
Okay, well,
that are
fine.
provided in court.
Okay. Good
Hi.
afternoon.
I'm Jeremy Risner, Brandon's father,
Yes, sir.
and I've prepared a statement I'd like to
Go ahead, yes.
read and maybe do a little ad lib too, if that's okay.
Yeah, that is okay.
Okay. I realize that most people in this room and on those TVs are seeing a murderer, and they're seeing what they're going to see. What they don't see, what they'll never see, is the joy that he brought into our lives the day he was born. He's a kind, gentle person who never, ever showed a sign of violence in his life. He showed nothing but kindness. He was a part of the Davis's family. There was an open door, a revolving door. I took that boy to scout camp every week, every year. They were family. He loved the smile on those kids' faces when he would go over there, so we let him go over as much as he wanted. When he went on his mission, you could tell he was feeling more and more like he's looking at his life from the outside like he's not there. But we tried to get him out, offer him love and encouragement. He's the reason I choose the right. He's the reason I would pray at night, because he set an example for me. And he was always strong for me. When he went on his mission, he ended up getting counseling for the same reason: suicidal tendency, feeling detached, feeling like he's outside looking in. We knew something was wrong. We got help for him. He was home for a while, went back on his mission out in Utah, and it was the same thing. The mission president got him the help he needed. We knew he had Tourette's. We knew he had OCD. We knew there was something different. But again, he was filled with so much kindness and love. I'm going to read it like a letter, because that's what it is. I'm writing you as a deeply concerned parent regarding my son, Brandon Risner, who is currently before you because of the actions he's already taken responsibility for by pleading guilty. I now respectfully ask for your leniency as you consider his case for sentencing. Brandon has always been a kind, a friendly person, cherished by those who knew him and know him. From a young age, he demonstrated a love for music and aspired to become an actor. His passion for the arts has been a significant part of his life and identity. However, Brandon also faces significant mental health challenges. Although they do not excuse his actions, he does suffer from depression, Tourette's, OCD. He's moderately autistic and is currently being treated for schizoaffective disorder. These conditions have profoundly impacted his life, especially over the past 2 years. Now make it 4. During this time, he experienced delusional thoughts and felt increasingly disconnected from reality. He began contemplating suicide, prompting us to bring him home from college to provide the support he desperately needed. Despite these struggles, Brandon has always sought to contribute positively to his community. He was an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and served a mission with dedication. He also completed a semester at Brigham Young University, Idaho, where he pursued his academic interests and also went further counseling and treatment for depression and suicidal tendencies. During his mission, Brandon sought help from a professional counselor referred by his mission president due to those suicidal thoughts and feelings of paranoia towards his companions. We did everything in our power to support him and provide the care he needed. Tragically, while he was back and living at home, that incident occurred that has brought us to this point. In November of 2022, Brandon's best friend since childhood, Aaron Davis, was staying at our home while we were out of town. For no discernible reason, Brandon took the life of Aaron Davis, a person who was truly like family to us. Likewise, Brandon was a loving part of the Davis family. This heartbreaking event occurred in our home, leaving both families and the community absolutely devastated. Your Honor, we firmly believe that Brandon's actions were not the result of malice, but rather the culmination of his mental health conditions. We're committed to ensuring that he receives the ongoing treatment and support he needs to manage his illnesses. We ask for your compassion and understanding in recognizing the profound impact his mental health had on his behavior. We earnestly hope that with appropriate treatment and care, he can one day prove himself able to reintegrate into society and lead a productive life. We humbly request that you consider a sentence that would be conducive to mental health treatment and eventual redemption. Our family is dedicated to supporting Brandon during his time in custody. And we're prepared to take all the necessary steps to ensure his continued rehabilitation while serving out his sentence. Thank you for taking this time to consider our request for leniency and the possibility of parole. We trust in your wisdom and fairness in making a decision that reflects both justice and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My best to you.
One more of those is Mr. Risner's mother, Jenny Lee.
Yes, Ms. Lee.
Hi, my name is Jenny Lee. I am Brandon's mom, and I'd like to start by saying how sorry I am for the Davis's loss. And I carry that grief with me every day. But I have to let you know about Brandon. I never imagined that I might one day have to stand here and ask for hope for the life of one of my children. I never thought that I would have to defend one of my children's characters because, I'm sorry. I never thought I would have to defend one of my children's characters because they have shown their character through the lives they live. But until these last couple of years, I always assumed that a person's character was defined by how they lived their life. However, I have come to believe that determining someone's character is much more complicated than taking a snapshot of their life. A simple glance at their life does not show you the trials that they have faced or the obstacles that they have overcome. My youngest child, Brandon, has taught me this. As his mother, I cannot define him by his worst moments. I will not. He is so much more than this case has shown him to be. And I thank you for allowing me to show you the character of this beautiful soul whom God sent me to raise. I had very few issues with Brandon's behavior as a young child. He was a good, honest, and kind child who was very concerned about making good choices. He was a goofy and fun-loving boy. However, we noticed that he began speaking later than his peers, and as he got a little older, his trouble with reading and the noises he made during class prompted us to seek the help of a psychologist. He was diagnosed with OCD and Tourette's syndrome. The Tourette's made it difficult for him to pay attention in class. His tics were very distracting for him, and it made it difficult to listen and to read. The OCD also made reading tedious and time-consuming because he would reread the entire sentence if he made a single error. The OCD also impacted his ability to pay attention due to the intrusive thoughts that plagued him. Despite these challenges, he was hardworking. He was a well-behaved student who earned good grades. He had support at school and at home. Throughout his teen years, his awkwardness became more noticeable. It made it more difficult for him to relate to and befriend many people. As difficult as it was for him to make friends, he kept them once he made a friend. I think it was because once someone got to know him, they realized how funny, imaginative, athletic, talented, and good-natured he was. His church gave him a place to belong and people who knew and loved him. He attended church seminary, which is a Bible study program, every school morning, and went to church almost every Sunday. His goal was to serve a mission when he turned 18, and he did his best to live accordingly. Missions are an opportunity to share the gospel and God's love. They also teach young adults independence and responsibility while challenging and strengthening their beliefs. Brandon strived to live his life in a way that would show that he was worthy to serve a mission. He had to remain chaste, be free of drug and alcohol use, refrain from using profanity, and carry himself with integrity. As awkward as Brandon could be, that awkwardness disappeared when he was with his family. He loved being an uncle, playing with his nieces and nephews. He was always eager to be with his family, whether he was pruning his grandmother's bushes, hiking with me, or getting into mischief with his brother. He loved nothing more than being surrounded by those he loved. Brandon loved music and taught himself how to play both guitar and piano. He had a huge heart and showed this by volunteering with disabled children at his school. He even spent a summer visiting with elderly people at a nursing home near our home. He never got in trouble in high school. We had no complaints from teachers, and he continued to get good grades through graduation. He finally left on his mission to Brazil in February 2020. Unfortunately, he was only in Brazil for about a month when they closed the country because of COVID. During his short time in Brazil, he experienced some of his first panic or anxiety attacks. They were triggered by his feelings of not belonging and paranoia that the other people did not like him. On more than one occasion, he told me that he felt outside looking in at himself and others living their lives. After returning home for a few months, Brandon was sent back on a mission to Utah. He expressed concerns about returning to the mission field because he was nervous and worried that people wouldn't like or accept him, and that the panic attacks he experienced while in Brazil would return. I urged him to try again because this had been his goal for years, and I didn't want him to regret not seeing it through. During his time in Utah, the panic and anxiety attacks not only returned but worsened. He again expressed concern to me that he felt like an outsider. He also revealed that he was worried that he might hurt someone. I did not overthink his worries at the time because the therapist he was seeing then and when he was younger had discussed his intrusive thoughts and explained that they did not indicate that he would act on them. I also took his wariness as somewhat normal teen behavior, as feelings of inadequacy and anger. I remember telling him not to worry about such things as hurting someone. I knew him, and he could never hurt another person. Nonetheless, his mission president's wife was a counselor and even had a son with Tourette's syndrome. He began counseling Brandon, and after a couple of months, Brandon still couldn't cope, and he decided that he was ready to come home. Brandon returned to mine and his stepdad's home for a couple months, and it seemed to us both that he was depressed and in a slump. He stayed in his room singing and playing guitar all day. Brandon lost his motivation to do anything, which was understandable. Most of his friends were on their missions or at college, and he was back where he had started. After talking to Jeremy, Brandon's dad, we decided that Brandon needed a change of pace and scenery, so we went to live with Jeremy and Rachel in Rome, Georgia. Several months later, Brandon started school at BYU-Idaho, where he roomed with Aaron and Luke Davis. But once again, the panic attacks and paranoia increased, and he soon found himself back at Jeremy and Rachel's house. We were hopeful that rooming with Aaron Davis would help quell the feelings of not belonging and the fear that people didn't like him. Brandon and Aaron had been best friends since the 8th grade. Brandon and Aaron spent so much time together that Brandon felt like part of the Davis family and loved them all. I don't know what happened that tragic night. I still have a hard time believing it, that Brandon could do this. I talk to him several times a week, and all I see is the same boy I know and love. The only way that I can reconcile this horrific act with my son is by acknowledging that Brandon suffers from severe mental breaks. That knowledge is the only thing that allows me to recognize that Brandon is where he needs to be for now. His actions cause devastating sorrow for the Davis family, and he will pay the price for those actions. As a mother, I can't help but feel like I missed a lot of clues as to what was going on with Brandon mentally. It was difficult for his family or friends to take his struggles as seriously as we should have, because he hid the severity of them so bravely. He did not want anyone to think of him as different or damaged. And his paranoia made him more apt to hide the parts of himself that he was worried would cause him to be rejected, even by me. It may have been avoidable with proper medication, additional mental evaluations, therapy, or discovering the misdiagnosis. However, I know that Brandon was not himself. He was not himself. He was not acting. With a sound mind that night. So I ask you today to consider what defines our character. Does our one worst act, despite a good life, define all that we are? Can one horrific mistake erase a lifetime of love and kindness? I cannot believe it does. And I hope you can see that too. My child is kind. and a loving human being who suffers from severe mental illness that were not recognized or dealt with in time to save two very good people's lives. Aaron Davis's and my son's. I ask that the time that he serves will be in a facility that can teach him, treat him, and help him overcome his mental issues. I ask that you consider granting him hope for a future outside of prison walls someday, so that he may one day return to the family that loves him and cares for him. I ask for your understanding, and most of all, I ask for hope. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, that's it for witnesses.
All right.
If the court will also apply its attention to the bond grant provided earlier with the evaluation of Dr. Risner. I'm going to refer to that quite a bit in my closing, as well as the other 15, I think, letters from family members on behalf of Brandon Risner.
All right.
Other than that, I'm ready for
Well, let's hear argument. Okay. Ms. Mayo?
I'll defer to be last.
All right.
I'll be last.
And I did review the psychological evaluation performed by Dr. Gleisner.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
First of all, my respect and condolences to the Davis family and friends. I've been practicing law a long time, 37 years. Don't recall a more heart-wrenching day. Tragedy that happened, that my client, Brandon, caused. Horrible tragedy that he took responsibility for. And the horrible tragedy that ultimately resulted in him pleading guilty. I've had multiple conversations with my client, as you can imagine, Your Honor, over the last 2.5 years about what happened, about best course of action. And to his credit, he understood that what he did was irrevocable and wrong, and that he wanted to take responsibility for it. I naturally, after reviewing the file and the state not offering any prior problems or convictions in aggravation, was curious as to if someone has never had a problem with the law, why all of a sudden this? So it naturally led me to believe that there were mental problems, severe mental problems, which resulted in not one but two psychological evaluations, one that we privately employed and the other done by the state. Both psychological evaluations concluded that legally there was no sustainable insanity defense, but both evaluators said, notwithstanding that, there were multiple psychological problems that Brandon was suffering from that still played a very large part that night. A lot of emotion has been heard here today, but I would ask the court to remember that this is a sentencing hearing. Courts of law over the years have had theories of why we sentence, why we punish, and it usually comes down to retribution, incapacitation, deterrence, and rehabilitation. All four worthy of consideration in assigning the punishment to any criminal defendant. I believe the first three, retribution,
incapacitation, and deterrence are already met by the minimum sentence this court can hand down today, and that's 30 years, period. Whether the court decides to give them the possibility of parole, not guarantee parole, but the possibility, which is what we're asking for, or without parole, minimum is there's going to be 30 years done. I believe that all three of those are met with that number. So the number that's left is rehabilitation, and whether or not Brandon is a candidate for rehabilitation. I would submit that he is, notwithstanding the case in aggravation that the state presented, which is heart-wrenching. It's noteworthy that he did do good things during his life, going in the mission field. He was a good son, brother, uncle, friend. He wanted to belong. And unfortunately, there were a lot of misdiagnoses that ultimately Dr. Gleiser and Dr. Ellison came up with, and specifically, and just as a background, Your Honor, Dr. Gleiser spent in excess of 30 hours reviewing all materials in this case. She's a highly respected forensic psychologist, but the hours spent were with interviews with Brandon, review of the state's evidence, medical records, review of competency evaluation written by Dr. Laura Ellison, who did that for the state, and interviews with over 10 family members. It's a 40-page report, thoroughly exhaustive and comprehensive. The report concludes with Dr. Gleiser's diagnoses of ASD, the first time we've heard of this, which is autism spectrum disorder. In addition, unspecified schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorder. Cannabis use disorder, which, because Brandon's been in custody, is in remission. Obviously, he doesn't have access to anything cannabis related, as well as alcohol use disorder, again, in remission because he doesn't have access to it. His mother testified from the letter that she wrote that for years they knew he had OCD and Tourette's, but nothing as serious as what Dr. Gleiser opined in a report. There are three, I believe, noteworthy comments that Dr. Gleiser makes in a report. First one is on page 37, and it says, it reads, although those with ASD are infrequently violent, research suggests that when it does occur, it is most often the result of misreading events or people as threatening, a common theme in Mr. Risner's life. That's on page 37. Next, ASD symptoms can, and in many circumstances, be so impairing that those with this condition cannot live independently and requires significant support. In Mr. Risner's case, he mostly lived with his parents, and during those brief times he lived away from home, he struggled quite significantly. And I think the most telling comment that Dr. Gleiser makes is, and it's actually her opinion, Brandon does not meet, as stated earlier, Brandon does not meet the criteria for the insanity defense. However, it is apparent his symptoms of ASD and unspecified schizophrenic and other psychotic disorders affected him tremendously the night of the offenses and were likely the primary contributing factors to Mr. Davis' untimely death. What I take away from that, Judge, is this. Maybe if Brandon had been diagnosed with ASD and these other impairments earlier, he would have gotten the necessary treatment, necessary therapy, but nobody knew about it. He's not insane,
but she can't help but conclude that but for the symptoms of the ASD and the other impairments, we wouldn't be standing here today. If you couple that with the fact that, once again, he doesn't have any kind of record, I don't even know if he has even a speeding ticket. I think it suggests that we're talking about somebody that is a candidate for rehabilitation. And in order to do that, he'll have to serve a minimum of 30 years. But if the court agrees and he is a candidate for rehabilitation, then we're asking that the court sentence him to life with possibility of parole. And once again, it's a possibility, it's no guarantee. He's going to have to prove himself. He's going to have to dig down and get a lot of therapy under his belt as he moves forward. So 30 years, I don't think I need to tell anybody, it's not a short period of time. So a lot can happen between now and then. And what these reports suggest is that this may be something entirely fixable. The tragedy that happened that night is not fixable. And I can't begin to feel the way the Davis family feels right now. But we are here, Your Honor, for a sort of business, and that is the sentencing. Every one of their victim impact statements was very, very difficult to hear. But I'm advocating on behalf of Brandon. I'm not saying somehow that he get released early, outside of the 30 years. I'm not suggesting anything that's not completely legal. I'm making an argument for mercy. I'm making an argument in equity. I'm making an argument for a kid that maybe if he had a little bit better therapy or a little bit better doctor once upon a time, this would have never have happened. Thank you.
As part of the evaluation that the defense provided both to the court and the state, there were narratives of Brandon's different accounts of what happened that night. His version of things that went on. And what we knew, of course, was horrific, but there were some things that only he could tell us as the only surviving person who was there, and those were equally disturbing as what we already knew from the police investigation. First, this was premeditated. This was not a random act of violence or a random occurrence. This is something that the defendant had been thinking about since at least early fall. He had taken edibles and witnessed a prophecy where he felt that God was telling him that he had to either kill his best friend or have sex with his stepmother, and so he thought there would be less self-pleasure in killing Aaron. He also had another prophecy, which is another term that the defendant uses for his visions, where he felt that that Aaron was going to lose it and become just as deranged as the defendant. The defendant thought Aaron might kill Phoebe or Micah, Aaron's younger siblings. So the day of, I knew, I had a hunch I would have to do it because of that prophecy. And so these are the defendant's words that on the day of, he knew this was premeditated, that he was going to kill Aaron. He also had another one where he thought that as some type of reward for killing Aaron, that he would then have an opportunity to see Lorelai, Aaron's younger sister, because she would have to come back for the funeral, and he might have a chance at that point to start a relationship with her because he'd had a crush on her. These things came about at times that the defendant was smoking marijuana and or drinking alcohol, but at different parts in his account and in different parts of the evaluation report submitted, the defendant recognizes that smoking marijuana and drinking made him have urges to kill, but he continued participating in those behaviors anyway. He last reported smoking marijuana a week before the murder, but he acknowledged that he was purposefully drinking that night in order to help prepare him in his plan to kill Aaron. So Aaron called the defendant that day to say that he was coming into town. And when the defendant got that call, he thought it was a sign of his destiny because his parents were out of town, and so Aaron would be alone with him at the house. His homicidal urges returned, and he decided he would channel them into the best possible outcome by killing Aaron. Aaron arrived around 4 o'clock at the defendant's residence. We know he had left around 2:40 based on the text messages. And when Aaron got to the defendant's residence, the defendant described that Aaron came in without knocking and that Aaron did not greet him with a hug, which was unusual because they did typically greet each other with hugs. The defendant shortly after had to leave to work at Rome Athletic Club, which is where he was working at the time. And while he was there working his shift, he described that he thought carefully about killing Aaron and decided to go through with it. So the decision was made by the defendant. He'd been thinking about it before that day, but he decided to do it after Aaron had arrived in town and when the defendant was working at his gym. He also, on the way home from the gym, picked up a bottle of red wine, which he intended for both he and Aaron to drink. He also talked about having dark fantasies and obsessions with movies like American Psycho. He wanted to prove that he wasn't a loser because he felt like if you have everyone fooled, that means you're not a loser. And he, at different points, expresses that he felt he would be a loser if he didn't kill someone, that he desired to be charismatic, that he desired to be, quote, the top dog psychopath. At a different point in one of his evaluations, he distinguishes himself from Ted Bundy, which again kind of shows that he sort of has this preoccupation with serial killers. He's obsessed with Christian Bale's character in American Psycho. He knows enough about Ted Bundy to distinguish himself from Ted Bundy and make a comment that showed he recognized what Ted Bundy had done. He was familiar with hydrochloric acid. He had watched Dahmer on Netflix. We knew that from the police cell bright of his phone. And so again, these things, he has these preoccupation with these things. And this also kind of puts into light the earlier searches for No Country for Old Men. That is after he's killed Aaron, in between his different searches to try to cover up his crime, is he's also still watching movies again on this subject matter. Ultimately, his dark fantasy becomes realized, and that's when he kills Aaron. And these are the defendant's thoughts when asked about the moments leading up to and when he is killing Aaron. I don't remember a single thought. I knew what I had to do. I was a man with a plan. I got up on the roof and stalked my prey. I became a carnal animal like in a dream. I saw that he was laying on the bed in there. I hid behind the pillow for a second to make sure that he didn't see. And the defendant reported that he started feeling emotion for the first time as he was killing Aaron. But then he later says, the only emotion that I felt was surprise that I could have done it, or that I could have changed my reality so drastically by doing one move. These are his words about how he felt as he was killing his best friend. He also talked about how he felt when he ran from police after they had discovered the bloody sheets in his home. I was feeling pretty good then. I knew that was supposed to happen, me running from the police. I also loved playing tag, and it was fun. I'd had dreams about being pursued by the police for something like this. I had a dream in the springtime where I stabbed Aaron in the neck and he wouldn't die, so I thought the dream came true. Again, this is some sort of dark fantasy of his, but it is also exciting for him, and it is enjoyable. He's likening this to a child game of playing tag, and this is where he's running from the police after he has killed his best friend. We also learned some new details about what actually happened based on his own description of the murder. So he did take Aaron to Cosmic Dog, where he ordered those drinks. And again, this is after he had already decided to kill Aaron. They went to Giggity's, and then the defendant drove both he and Aaron home, where they got around 11 p.m. They sang karaoke together, and then they drank the wine that the defendant had bought on his way home from work. Again, this is premeditated. This is part of his plan. The defendant acknowledged that by the time they drank the wine, he was drunk. He played guitar for Aaron, who complimented him, and the defendant recalled feeling very flattered because Aaron had given him 2 compliments that night. And then around midnight, Aaron went upstairs to go to bed, and the defendant could hear that Aaron was upstairs throwing up. So in his own words, he's going to then take that opportunity to pick out the murder weapon from the kitchen. He selects a knife that is sharp, short, and skinny. It's the same knife that he later admits that he cut himself with, so that cut on his hand never came from Aaron. The defendant cut himself. After he gets the murder weapon, he gets on the roof of the home, crawls outside the guest window where Aaron is sleeping, and he describes himself as stalking his prey at that point, as a man with a plan, as becoming a carnal animal. When he saw that Aaron was asleep, he crawls back into the window that he'd come out of. He goes down the stairs, retrieves the knife he's already picked out to kill Aaron with, goes up the stairs, stands behind the pillar, makes sure that Aaron is asleep, and then he begins stabbing Aaron in the neck. Aaron was asleep. He was vulnerable. He never saw this coming. He was not a threat in any way to the defendant, and the defendant acknowledges that repeatedly in that report, that he wasn't threatened by Aaron at that time, that Aaron had not been aggressive towards him at all, that in fact Aaron had been nice to him with those compliments and he had felt flattered by Aaron. The defendant's description of the murder is that it was horrible because it was apparent to him that Aaron was in pain. He said suddenly it didn't feel like God's will, it felt like pure evil. Because Aaron woke up and it was horrible, he was screaming a lot, and it felt like forever. This was gruesome, and Aaron suffered. If you compare what the defendant describes here with those earlier song lyrics that I presented, it does indeed sound like those are lyrics written based upon Aaron's death, because those lyrics were, he screamed till he choked on his own tongue and blood. His scream became a gargle as he swallowed his tongue. He also gave a description of what he did after, that he dragged Aaron's body into the shower in order to drain his blood, that he began removing parts of Aaron's body in order to, quote, lighten the load, that he put some of Aaron's remains in a suitcase for transport, and he then went and put Aaron's body in the trunk of Aaron's car. This is all Thursday evening / early morning on Friday, because it's after midnight. And he started cleaning the bedroom but didn't have enough cleaning supplies, so he goes to sleep with plans to wake up early the next morning to continue. But he does throw the knife onto the lawn. Friday morning, he retrieves the knife from the lawn where he had previously tossed it. He begins cleaning the bedroom. We know he searched about if there's duct tape at Walmart. He does go to Walmart by 6 p.m. that evening, where he purchases the duct tape. And we know that the duct tape was used to wrap Aaron's body. So when he's at Walmart at 6 o'clock, Aaron's body is still in a suitcase in Aaron's own car at the defendant's residence. The defendant took a Volvo belonging to his parents to get to Walmart. He then looked up and found a secluded location, but he wanted to wait until nightfall to bury Aaron's body, so he waited until that. And then after night fell, he began scattering evidence in different random dumpsters around Rome. He went to the wooded area off of Tunland Drive in order to bury Aaron where he wouldn't be found. And then he took Aaron's car to Heritage Park. At Heritage Park, he tossed the knife and some of Aaron's body parts into the river, including the missing piece of small intestine. He then pushed Aaron's car into the ditch that we saw pictures of earlier, but that was a deviation from his original plan. He had put the bricks in the backpack in the car with the intention of using those to wedge down the gas pedal so that the car would go further in, potentially even into the river, but it had been physically exhausting on him to bury Aaron's body, and so he was tired at that point, so he just put the car into neutral and let it roll into that ditch where it was later found. Saturday morning, he begins his campaign of lies and cover-up, where he starts telling multiple people that Aaron had left in the middle of the night, and he let his parents know that there were stains from blood, vomit, and red wine spills, telling the story that a glass of red wine had been dropped and the glass had cut, one of them causing blood. Some of the people he contacts, of course, we know Charlie girl already, but he also contacts his stepmother, kind of pushing that story similar to the text message we saw, or excuse me, the reminder to send a text that we saw from his post-murder to-do list. But he also starts messaging some of his friends the same thing, that Aaron had left in the middle of the night, or that Aaron was missing, or that he was going to try to join into the search for Aaron. He took purposeful, goal-oriented actions which show that he appreciated the wrongfulness of what he had done. For starters, he decided to commit the offense when his parents were out of town so that he would be alone with Aaron in the house. He drank to reduce his inhibition, and he got Aaron to drink as well. He also took steps to conceal Aaron's body and clean the crime scene. And he went to get duct tape to better facilitate the transport of Aaron's body. He also attempted to submerge Aaron's car in the water. He knew that he needed to wait until nightfall to hide and bury Aaron's body because it would limit his chances of being seen. He began telling several people he didn't know where Aaron was. We also know that he was calling Aaron's phone several times after he knew Aaron was already dead. These are all calculated steps by him that show he knew exactly what he had done was wrong, and he was taking careful steps in order to avoid detection and thus avoid any sort of responsibility for his actions. He also joined in on the search for Aaron in Heritage Park, and he reports acting distressed because he thought it was expected of him. And at another time in the report, he says he thought it would make him look innocent if he was there and was upset because his best friend was missing. He ran from police when it was clear he was about to be caught. I remember that was fun for him. That was like a game of tag. That was exciting. And he felt like that was, something that was always meant for him to have happen. And so when he ran from the house, he went along the railroad tracks to Rome Athletic Club, which is where he had worked at the time. In the running, he actually lost his cell phone, so he did not have his cell phone. He got to Rome Athletic Club where he took a shower. When his parents came into town, they thought to look for him at Rome Athletic Club, and so they went to Rome Athletic Club. If you'll leave it on...
Where is Rome Athletic Club?
I think it's near Shorter, but I do think it backs up to railroad tracks. I believe they lead directly to it. And he went there. His father and stepmother found him there by the time they got into town. He told his father what he had done, and then...
So the thought is he ran from East Rome to Rome Athletic Club.
Yes, sir.
So he had to cross the river at some point.
He went along the railroad tracks.
Over the river?
I don't know the specifics of that. What he said was that he followed the railroad tracks all the way to Rome Athletic Club.
Okay.
Jeremy Risner and his stepmother find the defendant there at Rome Athletic Club. He tells Jeremy what he has done. Then at that point, they go in the car and they drive to Tumlin Drive, which is where Brandon has said he buried Aaron's body. And his stepmother recalled, and again, this is in that report, that on the way to Tumlin Drive, Brandon was singing along to the radio as if nothing was wrong. When they get there, his father gets out. At some point, his father believes that is what has happened, and then tells Brandon that they're going to need for the defendant to turn himself in. Up until that point, the defendant had thought that his father might help him run, and so that was another thing that he kind of did to avoid detection. But when his father suggested that he turn himself in, the defendant did. So again, these are purposeful, goal-oriented actions that show he not only knew this was wrong, but he took calculated steps to try to avoid detection. He gives multiple different motives as to why he did this throughout. One is homicidal urges. One is that he thought he'd have greater access to Aaron's sister if he killed Aaron. Another was he believed he would have to have sex with his stepmother if he didn't kill Aaron, that he thought it was either a prophecy or God's plan. And then this is in his own words, I channeled my homicidal urges into the most successful outcome. With him eliminated, it would allow his siblings to blossom, his family to be healthier. I channeled my demons into doing God's will. I can't think about Aaron. I dream about him, but there are two different versions of him, the evil, manipulative one in my dreams, and then the nice, normal one. He also talks about how he loved Aaron. This wasn't an action out of hate. This wasn't something that had any sort of sexual connotation. And that he felt he would be a loser if he didn't kill someone, and he wanted to be charismatic, and he wanted to be the top dog psychopath. All of these are the different reasons that he gives at different points. But in reality, what these are that he has dressed up his homicidal urges with religion in order to justify those homicidal urges, and then his subsequent actions acting out those homicidal urges. He had those urges, he was aware of them, he wanted to act on them, and he did. He also hasn't shown remorse. He talked to Dr. Ellison about feeling that he was a psychopath because he had a lack of remorse, difficulty feeling and understanding emotions, and having intrusive thoughts of hurting himself or others. And he specifically felt he was a psychopath because he thought that he thought about killing someone and he lacked remorse. He has also not indicated any remorse for killing Aaron. These are specific quotes from him when asked how he felt about what had happened, or if he wished that things could have gone differently. Well, I'm still waiting to see how it works out, how the timeline works out. But I still feel mostly bad about it. But that's another reason that I think I'm a psychopath, because I don't feel that bad about it. I feel bad that the Davises hate me for it. And when asked if he could have done anything differently, I think I should have waited. It would have happened a different way. It would have happened out of self-defense. So he's not remorseful. In his own words, he doesn't feel that bad about it. And he's mostly worried about the fact that the Davises are upset with him than he is about the fact that he brutally ended Aaron's life. And that Aaron suffered. In his own account, he recognizes that Aaron suffered. He described it as horrible and feeling like forever. He also has had thoughts of harming others. In the spring of 2022, he started having dreams about hurting or killing others. He reported liking these dreams. These ultimately evolved into dreams specifically of killing family members or other people he knew, and then they became an actual desire to kill. He has thought about killing a homeless person. He's thought about going into downtown Rome with an axe. He once brought a knife while running errands in order to, quote, find someone to kill. He considered stabbing a male stranger that he saw near his car once. And he hid a knife in a bag at a family gathering that summer that included Aaron, and he reported that he was hugging the bag that had the knife in it while having interactions with Aaron and his own brother. All of this excited him. He called it a thrill that was related to something unallowed, but it also was connected to his desire to be powerful and influential after he felt that he failed at being good. One of the things that Dr. Gleiser talks about ASM with was that it's infrequently violent as a result of misreading results or misreading people as threats. This is not infrequent. He has thought multiple times about killing other people, about killing strangers, about killing family members, about killing friends, and ultimately he did kill his friend. And also, none of these are a result of him misreading something or him perceiving people as threats. Because particularly these random acts where he's thinking about killing a homeless person or thinking about finding someone to kill while he's armed with a knife, that's not him misreading someone as a threat. That's him actively looking for a person so that he can kill that person. That's him actively looking for a thrill by killing someone. He also is clear that at the time he decided to kill Aaron, and in the moments when he's on the roof and later when he's in the room behind the pillar, Aaron was not a threat to him. He did not think Aaron was a threat at that time. He just wanted to kill him. Go back. Will you go back? The defendant already had homicidal urges, and he had already been considering different ways to kill strangers, including taking a field trip with a knife where he hunted for someone to kill. Aaron coming to visit when the defendant's parents were out of town gave the defendant the opportunity to be alone with him and to kill him. In the defendant's own words, he felt like it was destiny because he would have Aaron alone with him at the house. It was also opportunistic. As he said, he channeled his homicidal urges into the most successful outcome, killing Aaron. Aaron was a fly that fell into the defendant's web. There's an old saying, "Welcome to my home," said the spider to the fly, where the spider invites his prey into his home, his web, in order to kill him. That is exactly what the defendant did to Aaron. Just like the fly, once Aaron arrived at the defendant's home, he was the defendant's prey. Because as we know now from the defendant's own account, it was after Aaron's arrival, while he was working at Rome Athletic Club, that the defendant decided to definitively kill Aaron. The only emotion that I felt was surprise that I could have done it or that I could have changed my reality so drastically by doing one move. This is the defendant's response to what he felt as and after he killed Aaron. That I could have changed my reality so drastically by doing one move. But the defendant didn't just change his own reality that day. He ended Aaron's reality completely and brutally and horrifically. He drastically changed the reality for Aaron's parents, for his siblings, for his girlfriend Charlie girl and her family, for his other relatives and friends, by removing Aaron permanently from their lives. The defendant also drastically changed the reality for his own family too because of this. That kind of action that drastically changes reality for so many, that ends a young life so full of potential in such a manner of violence and needlessly, that deserves drastic consequences. That the defendant has admitted to repeatedly experiencing homicidal urges, that he has knowingly continued to participate in behaviors such as using drugs or drinking that amplify his homicidal urges, and that he has taken steps to act on those urges, not just with Aaron, but also in the situation where he took a knife shopping/hunting, as well as his considerations of killing a homeless person or taking an axe or stabbing a stranger. All of these indicate that the defendant is likely to harm someone again should he be given a chance at parole. He presents a clear and future danger to the public. His lack of remorse for brutally killing his own best friend, something he himself refers to as horrible and a slow and painful death, and then mutilating his body, further indicates the ongoing danger he presents to others. That Aaron's horrific murder is the fulfillment of a twisted fantasy of the defendant to become the top dog psychopath also demonstrates a strong likelihood that he would continue to perpetuate violence on others. That he found the police chasing him after discovering the bloody sheets to be fun and playful, likening it to a game of tag and calling it fulfillment of a dream, is alarming and further evidence of the continuing danger he presents to others. He enjoyed killing and the cover-up and the pursuit by the police. This horrific and brutal murder was premeditated. The defendant was not afraid of Aaron that night. Aaron was asleep, helpless, and vulnerable when the defendant attacked him. The defendant since has shown no remorse, and he has homicidal urges and thoughts of harming others outside of Aaron that he has acted upon. He is an ongoing threat to others, and the possibility of parole would absolutely jeopardize the safety of the public. For all of these reasons, the state asks for life without the possibility of parole.
All right, I'm going to take another break and consider this matter further. I'll come out. Within 15 minutes and sentence Mr. Risner. First, I want to acknowledge all the family and friends that are present in court to support not only Aaron Davis, but also the defendant, Brandon Risner. Both of these young men have been loved throughout their lives. And I know all of you are experiencing tremendous pain, including the Risner family. But the pain of Aaron's family far exceeds that. To have a young son brutally murdered is unfathomable. I hope that your fond and loving memories of Aaron and that your faith will provide you some comfort as your life continues. Having said that, I have considered all of the facts and circumstances of this case and counsel's arguments. And I have come to the conclusion that justice requires that Mr. Risner be sentenced on count 1 to imprisonment for life without parole. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's based upon the premeditation, the manner of death, and the efforts to cover up all of the acts. On count 2, felony murder, that will be vacated by operation of law. Count 3, to which Mr. Risner also pled guilty, will be vacated by operation of law. Count 4, the aggravated assault, will be merged into count 1, as will count 5, aggravated assault, and count 6, aggravated battery. Count 7, concealing the death of another. The sentence will be 10 years. Count 8, abandonment of a dead body, there will be a sentence of 3 years. Count 9, theft by taking, motor vehicle with a value more than $5,000, the sentence will be 10 years. Count 10, removal of body parts, be a sentence of 12 months. Count 11, tampering with evidence, be a sentence of 10 years. And count 12, obstruction, that's a misdemeanor, the sentence will be 12 months. So the total sentence is life imprisonment without parole. Did you want to add something, Ms. Mayo?
Your Honor, count 11 is a misdemeanor. You had said 10 years?
Count 11,
Yes, sir.
tampering with evidence.
Yes, sir.
Well, I thought I looked that up. Okay. That will be a sentence of 12 months as opposed to 10 years. The sentence speaks for itself. God bless everybody in the courtroom.
Oh, Your Honor, would you include a condition of no contact of any kind with Sarah and Randy Davis and their immediate family, as well as Charlie Girls Challenger?
He's not on probation. The straight sentence is up to the Department of Corrections to control that. That'll conclude this matter. You bring the sentence back when it's finished. Deputy, would you like me to step out first, or would you like the defendant